Okay, I think we're going to get things started today. Hi, everyone. I'm Anna McLaughlin. I'm the Program Director for Transportation Program Management with AASHTO. Welcome to webinar 66 in our Transportation Asset Management webinar series, sponsored by FHWA and AASHTO. Very grateful to have you here today. For those that are not already off on vacations for the holidays, welcome. Today's topic will feature speakers from 5 state DOTs sharing their experience with adding transportation assets other than pavements and bridges to their TAM programs. Topics will include how to apply TAM principles and approaches to these assets, agency outcomes, challenges, and lessons learned. We have presented webinars in this series every 2 months going back to 2012 on a variety of topics in asset management. For more information on this webinar series, you can visit tam-portal.com. That's TAM-portal.com. From there, click events in the main menu to register for any webinar. You'll also find archives of previous webinars and links to videos and slides from today's webinar, and the slides and videos from today's webinars will be posted on the site. This site is home of the AASHTO Subcommittee on Asset Management. For information on the subcommittee, you can visit this website, tam-portal.com, and click on Subcommittee on Asset Management under Community menu. If you have suggestions on future webinar topics or have questions for the presenters during today's webinar, please submit your comments or your questions using the webinar's chat feature. We will answer questions during the Q&A session at the end of the webinar. We'll invite audience members to unmute and share their thoughts during the group discussion session at the end of the webinar. Until then, we hope you'll be careful to keep your audio connection muted. So if you haven't already, please be sure to mute your audio so that our presenters are not interrupted as they're giving their presentations this afternoon. We appreciate that. Thank you. This recording will be available online. So yes, this will be posted on the portal website. I think that covers the logistics for today's webinar. I'm now going to turn it over to Tasha Clemens of FHWA. Hi, Tasha.
Hello. I hope everyone is doing well today, getting ready for the holidays. I am Tasha Clemens, and I represent the Transportation Asset Performance Team in the Office of Infrastructure of Federal Highway Administration. Federal Highways, in cooperation with the AASHTO Subcommittee on Asset Management, is very pleased to sponsor this webinar series. We feel it's a great way to bring people together around a series of important topics and to connect with the asset management community. We have a great team of speakers on the agenda today who will share their experiences with including assets other than pavements and bridges in their TAM programs. With this webinar, as we previously stated, we have reached the 66th webinar in our series. And FHWA's Transportation Assets Performance Team is committed to increasing knowledge and capabilities at transportation agencies across the U.S. So I would encourage you to visit us online for more information and to gain access to available resources. You should see the address, which is shown on the screen. And finally, I just want to say thank you for your participation today. We know that this is at the end of the year. People are traveling and getting ready for the holidays. So we really do appreciate you participating. We think you will enjoy today's presentations. So now I would like to turn it over to Hyana Parks of Spy Pond Partners to give an overview of today's webinar, to review today's agenda, as well as to introduce our speakers. Hyana?
Thank you, Tasha. I'm Hyana Park with Spy Pond Partners, just as Tasha just mentioned. As Anna and Tasha mentioned previously, the purpose of the webinar series is to share lessons learned, ideas, and knowledge with the asset management community. For this webinar, the primary learning objectives are to highlight how state DOTs are adding transportation assets other than pavements and bridges into their TAM programs at their agencies, exchange best practices, challenges, and lessons learned 4, including a wider variety of assets in TAM programs. Learn how to apply TAM principles to many transportation assets. And of course, share lessons learned, ideas, and knowledge. For the agenda today, we started off by hearing from Anna McLaughlin and Tasha Clemens. I will introduce our speakers before each presentation, but in brief, they are Stephanie Shippee from Connecticut DOT, Kellie Thom from Minnesota DOT, Mike Johnson from Caltrans, Ning Li from Virginia DOT, and Toby Manthey and Hope Wright from the Colorado DOT. Time permitting, we'll have an open group discussion at the end. Just another reminder, please submit your comments or questions using the Zoom chat feature anytime during the webinar. We'll make sure to cover them at the end of the webinar. And again, yes, we will make the slides and video available today after the webinar at TAM portal in the webinar section. One final note for our presenters to keep things moving along the schedule. I'll chime in to remind you when you have a couple of minutes remaining in your allotted time. Our first presentation is recorded from Stephanie Shippee from Connecticut DOT. Now let's hear from Stephanie.
Hello, I'm Stephanie Shippee, and today I'll be talking about the additional assets that Connecticut DOT includes in its Transportation Asset Management Program. Connecticut DOT currently has 11 assets in its highway TAMP and more in development for the future. We were fortunate enough to find this photo that includes all 11 of these assets. For bridge and pavement, we report both the required NHS data and as well as the entire Connecticut DOT maintained network. We also include traffic signals, signs, sign supports, pavement markings, highway buildings, illumination, drainage culverts, retaining walls, and ITS ATMS. But we didn't start with this many assets. Our first TAM included these first 6. We did recognize as an agency from the beginning that if asset management was the best way to do business, then we should implement it as broadly as possible throughout the department. We added highway buildings the next year, and we went from 7 assets to 11 for our 2022 TAMP. And as you can see, we have plans to expand in the future. We have ADA curb ramps, fleet, noise walls, and guide rail in our pipeline for development for next year or the following years. So to get into our process for making this many assets manageable, I wanted to briefly describe the structure of our program at Connecticut DOT. So my group is located within the project administration unit, which is in the Bureau of Engineering. So we sit there with our pavement management group, cost estimating, contract development, and then we have designated teams. So staff who would either work on our highway TAMP or our public trans TAMP. And then for each of our 11 assets, we filled these designated roles. So the asset liaison is a member of my highway TAM team. This person is working on asset management day in, day out. They're the ones who help meet TAM deliverables, keep those due dates in mind, and they also ensure consistency between the assets. Each asset also has a designated asset steward. This is somebody at the supervising engineer level or above, and they are responsible for making a significant amount of project selection decisions for the asset as part of their role. Each asset also has a working group that meets at least once annually. These are the other stakeholders who are involved in the asset and its data. Critically, these roles are an official part of everyone's job descriptions. Asset stewards don't see their role in the TAM program as an extra. It's a part of their position. So to zoom out a bit from my earlier slide on where my group sits here in the corner, here's an illustration of where all these other team players fit in. So you can see the asset stewards are also in the Bureau of Engineering. They're in our design units. That there could be asset working group members coming from there as well. But we don't just pull from engineering and design. We've also got asset working group members who are from our planning or maintenance bureaus or even from construction. And so again, every year we do produce deliverables for all 11 of our assets. We don't feel like our program could be consistently followed if we use a longer interval than that in terms of data management and collection. So every year we have each asset steward prepare a 30 to 60 minute state of the asset presentation to our chief engineer's office. That happens every spring as part of our preparation for our consistency determination to FHWA. So we also include all of our assets into the TAMP narrative. For example, all 11 assets address the resiliency requirement in 2022. I've presented our fact sheets in a previous webinar, so I won't go into too much detail here, but I will say that they are extremely helpful communication tools that we produce annually for each asset. So they're very helpful to have as a package for the year that's submitted or to look back historically for one asset. So we have 6 years of data for bridge and pavement 6 that we can look back on and compare. Those are one-pagers. And we use a consistent data collection template, which really helps us, again, organize that data collection across assets and years. So I wanted to share some of our lessons learned for any states who are considering adopting more assets into their own TAM program. And so first, our challenges: more work, consistency, and our evolving assets. We noticed this especially on our transition from 7 to 11 assets, but more assets means more work. It's more data for us to report. It's more asset stewards for us to coordinate with. It's more working group meetings to hold, more fact sheets to produce. We've included this somewhat blurry image from our consistency submission to FHWA. The numbers don't really matter, but I think the green and red with what the numbers are can show there's 11 more opportunities to fall short of our performance projections. We also find it difficult to represent the assets consistently, especially when they're at varying stages of maturity. We have many years of reliable bridge condition data and very little data for our pavement markings. So we do use these data confidence meters on our fact sheets, but it's constantly a challenge to report assets that are different, even something like a linear asset like pavement, or a discrete but complex asset like a highway building, to be representing them kind of equally in our TAMP. Remains a challenge and remains something that we seek to improve upon. And then less mature assets are their own challenge. My personal background is in hydraulic engineering, so I always like to point to our drainage culvert asset. We have a relatively small, this dark blue chunk of them actually inspected. And almost half of the entire network hasn't even been mapped in a digital environment yet. We don't know a lot about this bigger picture of our drainage culvert network, and then it's therefore very challenging for us to make projections and to make accurate projections with such little data. But we do feel that the benefits of having this robust asset network outweigh these challenges. I'll list them here, but I'll go into detail on further slides. So with the large amount of asset stewards and working group members, we've really been able to boost awareness of asset management practices and principles throughout the DOT. There's a broad awareness of what we do, what we're all about, and what state of good repair means throughout our department. We're also able to codify kind of TAM best practices within the way that CTDOT does business. Our current leadership is extremely supportive of our asset management initiatives. We hope this continues to remain true for future administrations. But it's also just helpful for us to establish that this is the way we do business and have these designated roles and deliverables annually. And at this point, that I will also add that our local FHWA division office is extremely supportive of all these efforts. We don't feel penalized again for all that red on our consistency submission where we, made inaccurate projections or didn't meet them. We really feel like they've supported us as we've grown and done our best with some of these evolving assets. And then we see our assets be able to evolve as our data improves for them. So I think that our traffic signals asset is an excellent example of this. Traffic signals is one of those assets that was with us from the start. It had an age-based state of good repair from 2018 on. But once they kind of got a handle on that, they were able to start trying to work towards component-based state of good repair and perform inspections on all these traffic signals and the components. And so in 2024, we'll see a different state of good repair that's component-based that we think is a much more accurate way to represent what our traffic signal network looked like. And that wouldn't have been something that was possible year one, but it's something that we've been working to the past couple of years. And we're really proud of how this asset has evolved. And we see the potential for similar growth with other assets. And again, the illumination of evolving asset needs is a tremendous benefit to us. Again, to go back to these drainage culverts, knowing what we don't know has allowed us to shine that light on, for example, the much needed funding to get a full inspection plan going for these things. And of course, we are building towards being able to make network-based decisions in the future to consider all of our assets during project selection to optimize the state of good repair of the entire Connecticut network, not just Connecticut bridges or Connecticut pavement or Connecticut traffic signals, to really be considering our full network. So in conclusion, we do feel that having that robust asset network has really helped us implement TAM throughout CTDOT. And I would encourage other states to dive in, even with assets that don't feel ready. And I emphasize that having dedicated roles and processes really help make the larger program manageable. I've included the link to our online fact sheets if anyone wants to look at the data or how we've evolved with all these assets throughout the years more closely. But thank you so much for your time. Feel free to email me with any questions or comments, and thank you so much.
All right. Thanks to Stephanie for recording her presentation. Our next presenter is Kellie Thom from the Minnesota DOT. Kellie is the TAM's Hydra-Infra coordinator at MnDOT. And now let's turn it over to Kellie.
Hello, I'm Kellie Thom. I do work at the Minnesota Department of Transportation, the Bridge Hydraulics Office. Let me just share my screen here quick. All right, can everybody see that? Okay, so
okay, now it's there.
Now it's there. Okay, great. Okay, we'll get started here. Like I said, my name is Kellie Thom. I am the TAM's High Infra Coordinator for the Minnesota Department of Transportation. Today I will discuss our transportation asset management system with a focus on our hydraulic infrastructure. Sorry, it's kind of slow today. Let's try this here. Okay, sorry about that. Okay, here is a brief background of our data collection efforts. So we started in 1995. We wanted to start a drainage asset database, and we named it HYDINFRA, which stands for HYDINFRA, Hydraulic Infrastructure. And that was developed by MnDOT's hydraulic and water resources engineer to help improve drainage design and maintenance work. All this data was point data, GIS enabled, and report enabled. In the mid-2000s, our Metro District, which covers the Minneapolis-St. Paul area, decided to use HYDINFRA to meet the mapping requirements of the MS4 permit. With this, pipes went from points to lines, areas prone to spills were documented, and illicit discharge questions were added to our inspection forms. In the mid-2000s, HYDINFRA was used to determine where potential underground storm sewer was located for Gopher State 1 call. In 2006, we started tracking maintenance repairs made to drainage infrastructure utilizing a data dictionary within our Metro District. Later on, in 2014, we started using a web app to collect this information statewide. In 2008, performance measures were created for condition and inspection for our highway culverts. In 2017, we began the migration of our hydraulic infrastructure database into an agency-wide transportation asset management system. TAM's HYDINFRA represents just 4 asset types out of the 27 asset types that TAM's currently has. So what does drainage asset management look like at MnDOT? Each feature is assigned a unique ID, and that is how we are able to tie all the information together. All of our data is location-based and has auto-calculated attributes such as route, reference point, maintenance and construction district, and county. We have inventory and inspection tables for each feature class, for pipes, structures, and ponds. Inspection data collected varies by feature type, but we store all the inspections for each feature. Features have geometry and location. Pipes are stored as lines, structures as points, and ponds are now polygons, and all that is managed within our TAMS database. TAMS also includes both active and inactive features. We also have the ability to include features owned by others where the information is relevant, but the main objective is drainage features within MnDOT right-of-way, and those where MnDOT has ongoing responsibility. Maintenance work orders can be tied to each feature through their ID. And eDocs, or electronic documents, can be linked to features based on that ID as well. TAM's HYDINFRA includes 4 data classes, which consist of a little over 235,000 in-place features. If we break that number down, MnDOT has roughly 143,000 pipes, which include both storm sewer and culverts. Roughly 78,000 structures, including typical storm sewer structures, structural pollution control devices, and special structural features. And about 1,500 ponds, which include ponds, basins, and wetlands. So how does MnDOT use this data? Statewide is used for capital planning and project programming, reporting on our performance measures and TAMP, completing Gopher State 1 call requests, informing our design standards and design guidance, meeting and reporting on MS4 permit requirements, and in research. In districts, hydraulics, they use this data for project selection, scoping of upcoming projects, to add information to design plans, as an aid to drainage permit reviews, and to fulfill data requests. For district maintenance, they use this data as a planning tool and also in spill and flood response. We have many different ways users can access our data, from internal to external, and from read-only to being able to edit it. Users can access the data to create reports, view dashboards, work order processing, update and add information through our Agile Assets web interface, both internally and externally. They also use our field app, Work Manager, for work order processing and feature inventory inspections internally and externally as well. Internally, users have access to Crystal reports to see a full history of a feature or to help plan for projects. Guardrails, as you see here on the screen, is a read-only map which shows all of our asset information. So you can see the list of assets we have here on the left in the table in the catalog view. And spatial data views are also available, which can be brought into GIS. Data capture is either done in the office or in the field. We also require as-built information as part of our construction process. As mentioned before, MnDOT utilizes both the Work Manager app and the Agile Assets interface to capture and update our inventory and inspections. The equipment that we use include tablets, field laptops, iPhones, desktop computers, external GPS units, underwater cameras, and our Hive inspection vehicle. So who collects this data? Mainly it's district hydraulics and water resources staff, maintenance staff, consultants, and contractors also collect this data as well. We have a robust set of inspection criteria for ponds, structures, and pipes. It was developed by MnDOT, and while our office, Bridge Hydraulics, is the manager owner of the inventory and inspection criteria and attributions, all the districts that at MnDOT work together when updates or changes are needed or asked for. Inspection criteria does not follow a FHWA standard. However, the newly released ASHTO, culvert, and storm drain inspection guide include references to our MnDOT TAM's height infrared inspection criteria. Every program has issues and hopefully some solutions. These are the ones that are most prevalent in ours and what we are doing to solve them. Data quality and consistency is always number one on my list. As databases and users change, there will always be quality and consistency issues. To try to reduce these issues, I do the following. I have monthly meetings during the inspection season to talk about recurring issues I'm seeing and provide a way for inspectors to chat with each other if they have questions. I also provide yearly training for both internal and external users. MnDOT requires all inspectors to follow our inventory inspection manual for drainage. Myself and the Asset Management Office provide data and tech support. And I send out quality reports to all of our inspectors to see if their pipe inspections meet our pipe criteria. Data completeness is another issue we run into. What information collected really depends on the collection methods. Typically in the field, you won't have all the design plans with, but going back and filling the blanks takes time, which we all know is the most limiting factor. We're slowly putting in the missing information such as year built, year aligned, and plan number information, and are also utilizing as-built information to make our data more complete. Collection application and equipment change is unavoidable. Customizations, balancing user needs and application capability are all things that need to be considered and are the biggest challenge. We have gone through 4 or 5 different apps and a variety of equipment. Nothing is straightforward or easy. And lastly, data uses. As our asset management system gets more robust, more uses for the data are found. This is great, but trying to meet everyone's needs can be a pain point. For example, collecting flood data and maintenance work orders, or adding a field in our culvert inspection form if we see a certain animal species, would be wonderful. But each of these asks takes clear communication in what is and what isn't possible, involves many groups. It is not something that should be done without exploring the impacts of what could happen. So thank you for listening to me today, and I look forward to hearing what others are doing.
All right, thank you, Kelly. Mike Johnson from the California DOT, also known as Caltrans, is our next presenter. Mike is the State Asset Management Engineer at Caltrans. Now, over to you, Mike.
Good morning or afternoon, everybody. As Tiana said, my name is Mike Johnson. I'm the Caltrans State Asset Management Engineer, and just run through a quick presentation on what we're doing beyond just pavements and bridges. In general, our approach looks at about 30 different performance objective areas, and we develop both an unconstrained and a constrained framework and estimates for these things. And by doing this, it gives us really the most insight into the decision making that we have to make as an agency, because the funds that we're managing are distributed across all 30 of these things. They're not just distributed across pavements and bridges. In other words, if I want to invest more in safety improvements, I might have to reduce my investment in pavements and bridges. And so to not have safety as one example in the mix, you really don't see sort of the totality of the different performance decisions that you have to make. So for all of these reasons, we produce a very, very detailed document called the State Highway System Management Plan. It's out there on the internet, available as a PDF for anyone that wants to look at it. But in general, we're looking at a number of different things. So these are some of the physical assets that we look at, and I've broken them down between physical assets and deficiencies because they're very different in how we handle the performance models for these. So for pavement, for example, we break our pavement down into 3 different classes of pavement so that we can better target investments to, say, interstates versus lower volume rural roads. Obviously bridges are required. We also include culverts and transportation management systems. Those top 4 physical assets are what we really call our 4 core assets. But we also include bike and pedestrian facilities, facilities like buildings. We are responsible for maintaining about 700 different buildings that are servicing the transportation system, either maintenance stations, equipment shops, commercial vehicle, way stations, laboratories, or other things. So we have a lot of buildings that are part of our asset management decision making, things like weigh in motion scales, and then a whole slew of other things that are smaller, more ancillary components of the highway system, like drainage pumps, overhead signs, roadside rest areas, sign panels, lighting, and there's more. So those assets are all inventoried. The condition is assessed. We can apply deterioration models to them. We establish performance targets for them, and we do performance management exactly the same way that everybody does with pavements and bridges. We're just doing it over a much broader set of physical assets. But then what may be unique about what we do is we also bring in all of our deficiencies. And so, deficiency is an issue with the system that you can't go touch. That would be the simplest way that I would describe it. So if we have a safety needs, we want to improve our safety performance by reducing fatal and serious injuries. That takes money, and that money that we would devote towards safety could very well come from one of these physical assets, or at least the trade-off decisions that have to be made. And similarly, things like improving the operations of the system to reduce congestion, and delay. Those are things that, again, you can't go touch it, but you can measure it. System vulnerabilities that exist, things like geotechnical slides, bridge scour, bridge seismic, climate adaptation needs like sea level rise, coastal cliff retreat, wildfire. All of those are again deficiencies of the system. You can't really go put your fingers on a wildfire evacuation need that you might have, but we know it exists, and to the extent we opt to fund it, it takes funding away from the physical assets that you can touch. There's more. This is just a sampling of of the things that we're considering beyond pavements and bridges. If you want to see the comprehensive list, again, you can download our state highway system management plan, and they're all laid out. And then from a fiscal standpoint, because I am responsible for the fiscal distribution of about $5.5 billion annually. When we look at where that money goes, we can see that obviously pavements and bridges are what we call the anchor for a lot of the projects. It doesn't mean that 51% is all going to pavement, and I'll show an example of that in a minute, but pavement is the primary purpose for the project, 51% of the dollars that we spend. Bridges are about 20, but then you get into safety at 5.6, and you get into everything else at another 15. So if you're only looking at pavements and bridges, you're sort of blind to 30% of the problem. And we choose to not, we want to understand that 30%. We want to understand the trade-offs between pavements and bridges and these other things that we're trying to achieve. So here's an example. This is just showing at the bottom. I highlighted this section. There's a lot going on here, but at the bottom there's this kind of pinkish box, and in that box, this is a pavement project by definition, but this project is also doing some vegetation control for worker safety. It's putting some guardrails in. It's doing some drainage work. There's some proactive safety improvements being done. There's some repairs or upgrades of curb ramps. We're installing a weather information station. We're putting in a bunch of rumble strips and sign panels, and some transportation management system elements, as well as detectable warning surfaces. So there's a lot going on in this project that gets lumped budgetarily into pavement, but you could see from looking at this that it's not, all of the dollars are not going to pavement. Pavement just happens to be, what we call the anchor asset for this project. So, when you look at 51% for pavement from this prior chart and the 20% bridges, just know that the dollars behind this are not all going to asphalt or concrete pavement, or they're not necessarily all, going to what's on the bridge. Some of this may be bridge approach and things like that. So I guess, to make a long story short, we feel that in order to get a complete handle on our asset management, make the best decisions of where to put our available tax dollars, we need to look at the entire picture. And I mean, obviously there's a logical break. We're not, we can't go down to infinitesimally small portions of the system. So we've arrived at this about 32 different objectives that we really focus on. So kind of concluding this really quick run through of this, we want to look at everything so that we can really understand, what our choices are. And if we need better performance in pavements and bridges, we can go look in these other areas to possibly economize. And so this approach really, like all performance management, relies on developing a relationship between the investments that you're making and the expected performance outcomes. We're just doing this across, many, many things. And from our perspective, we believe that this provides, really the most transparent picture, not only for us in trade-off decision making, but also in our ability to communicate where all of our gas tax dollars are going. We can show a much more comprehensive picture. And that's important because we do have groups that, advocate very strongly for things like bicycle and pedestrian infrastructure, or advocate very strongly for us to address barriers for threatened and endangered species migrations, whether they're in the water or on land, and a whole bunch of other things. Like many of the agencies probably in this call, we have to look at stormwater mitigation. We have to look at a whole slew of things, and our available budget is one pie, if you will, and we want to look at all the slices so that we can appropriately size each slice relative to the total size of our pie. So if there's any question, again, my email address is here. If you're interested in seeing more information, we have a whole webinar recorded on the State Highway System Management Plan. You can watch the video and I go through the whole thing. Or if you prefer, you can download the plan off the internet. And with that, I will conclude. Thanks, Yana.
Thanks, Mike. All right, now we're going to hear from Ning Li with the Virginia Department of Transportation. Ning is the Traffic Asset Program Manager at VDOT.
Thank you, Hyena. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Ning Li. I'm the funding manager of VDOT's Traffic Asset Program, which we established over 10 years ago to proactively managing diverse traffic assets. It's a pleasure to be here today to share Virginia's experience and to learn best practice from other states. As the third largest state DOTs, VDOT manage a lot of traffic assets. We have over 1 million signs, 34,000 traffic infrastructure, 7,400 miles of guardrail, and over 150,000 terminals, over 3,000 traffic signals, and 50,000 roadway lighting fixture and more. So these traffic assets are critical to the safety and operation of a highway system, and they are very unique as compared to bridge and pavement. First of all, they touch everyone's life every day. So we all rely on traffic signals and signs to get to work or destinations. They are also dynamic, diverse, some of electric powered and technology driven. They're also in the diverse geographic locations. They are either in the pavement, like markers, or over the bridge, the sign on the roadside, like guardrails. So it's very challenging. It's a lot of challenge to manage all these diverse traffic assets. First of all, they have large quantities and relatively low unit cost as compared to bridge and pavement. They're not required in FHWA's Transportation Asset Management Plan. It also takes significant efforts to keep the inventory up to date due to its large quantities. As a result, probably 10 years ago, like many other state DOTs, we have no or very limited information of the inventory and condition for most of the traffic assets. I often use an analogy, say, probably 10, 15 years ago, when we buy a $10 product from Amazon, I know exactly when it's shipped, when it arrived in my city, and when it show up my front door. So while we manage a $10 million transportation program, oftentimes we don't know where and when and where the money is being spent on which assets. I think we can do do it better. So back in 2014, we faced several challenges on ADA curb ramps. Probably most of you have known that on that years, the DOT issued a mandate of curb ramp improvement in alteration projects. So we are required to track the inventory and conditions to bring compliance for the curb ramps. Similarly, in 2016, we faced a similar challenge on guardrail. So we are required to understand how many obsolete terminals we have by model and manufacturers. So which is actually create a challenge, but also create opportunity for us to do something new because these are brand new programs. So in essence, we started with ADA curb ramp programs. like many other states, because we were required by the chief engineer at that time, remember, to establish a new curb run program in 30 days. So we started with a traditional approach, like having asset data connection phones, have people connect the data in the field, enter in the spreadsheet, have a database. We soon found that it's error prone and cumbersome. Think about each intersection, we probably have 8 curb runs. To enter lat and long on a piece of paper and then enter into Excel, so you have 2 times to introduce errors. So leverage data and technology, we implement several innovations. That's many mobile applications, ArcGIS Online applications, and the business intelligence tool for the real-time reporting. I know it's hard to understand how it works. We have a story map just to give you some concept how this works. What you see here is real-time curb run map. So it's being that's actually available to the general public. So as our field workers use mobile applications to assess and improve the curb runs, it will show up on this map. So you have different legends showing different color of the curb run showing that condition. When you see the green box, that means the curb run have been improved. In this way, we let the general public knows that VDA is making good faith, bringing the curb runs in compliance. They can see the improvement in their neighborhood. In our internal systems, we have much more detailed information. This is one example of the intersection. As you can see, this intersection have 6 curb runs. This one probably have a condition C. When you click it, you can see the exact information why this curb run is rated as a C conditions, who did it, assessment, when we did an improvement, and what's the cost. This one costs probably $3,000. And also we have a before and after pictures. This is an after pictures. Oh, I think I messed up with. Sorry, because sorry for the technologies, because I accidentally closed up the story map. Yeah. Back to our yeah, that take these are real-time maps, so it take a little bit of time to update. So back to my sample locations. So we also on this map we also integrated information like sidewalk, as you can see, when it's the curb run is improved. These are the pavement map. So we also have a business intelligence tool for the reporting. It's always that it takes a second to upload. Yeah, as you can see, these are the BI tools. We used to have, similar to other states, we have an annual report showing our progress. But with the BI tools, we are actually having the information, the performance progress in real time. As you can see, this map is updated 2 hours, probably actually at 2:45. It's just updated. So we have the real-time informations where you can filter the curb run situations. We have the status report by districts, and we are monitoring our program progress in real time. As you can see, this map, the red line shows our improvement. The blue line shows our target. As you can see, for this year, we're still ahead of our target, so that means so good. And we also have the condition of the districts, so we know exactly what's the condition of the curb ramps we have in each district. We also have just quick sharing of our guardrail store map. We are using the model applied the ADA curb ramp to other states. So this is the ADA guardrail map. Similarly, we have the BI tools. Probably due to the time limit, I'll just show you very briefly. This is one map that we're showing the curb ramps, the obsolete terminals that we had it several years ago when we started to improve. These are the one certain type of obsolete terminals on 50 miles roads. This map shows several years ago, and this new map shows what's the current condition. We'll probably only have one left. So back to my presentations. Leveraging data and technologies, we significantly transformed our ADA curb ramp from a sporadic improvement to a systematic with real-time trackings with performance measures. So these technologies significantly enhance the program management. We now have one cloud-based statewide inventory for curb ramps and guardrails. We used to, for the curb ramp assessment and improvement, we used to have 5 people doing the field assessment in one district, in Nova district alone. But with the technologies and efficient improvement, they actually reduce the staff to 2. Now, what I heard is they're just using 1 people to doing the same work with much better quality results. So they also enhance significantly the oversight of our program schedule and cost. Now we know exactly when and where our money is being spent on which assets. So that helps significantly for our program oversight. We have another innovation for our programs is using the virtual data connections to collect inventory, which significantly reduce the cost and timeline. We did that for our curb ramps and for our guardrail terminals. We have also strived to manage the traffic, the assets from life cycles. We did it for the guardrails, for traffic signals. In a nutshell, we're trying to integrate asset information from its planning stage to design constructions in one spot, in a one stop, so we can have the work order information of an asset in one place. In summaries, we leveraging data and technology, we dramatically improve the quality and efficiency of traffic asset management in Virginia. The technology we use are low cost. They are widely available tools and products, mainly ArcGIS Online and mobile applications, and business intelligence tools. And it's also scalable. As you can see, we apply the same model from curb ramps to guardrails to other assets. And what these tools you see is in-house developed by our business unit with no IT project support. So our program has been nationally recognized with multiple awards, including the 2009 FHWA National Road Award. With that, I know I probably exceeded a little bit time limit. So with that, I'm going to end my presentation. If you have any questions, feel free to email me.
All right, thank you, Ning.
Thank you.
Okay, our final presentation is from Toby Manthey and Hope Wright from the Colorado DOT. They're going to speak on the CDOT buildings and other assets. Toby is CDOT's Asset Management Program Manager, and Hope is the Real Estate Asset Manager. To you guys.
Thanks, Hannah, and good afternoon, everyone. I'm Toby Manthey, CDOT's Asset Management Program Manager. And instead of talking today about our overall TAM program, we wanted to switch it up a bit and have one of our asset managers talk about how they implement the requirements of our program and about the challenges they faced. So Hope is here to talk with us about how she manages buildings. Before we turn it over to Hope, we want to give a quick refresher of our overall TAM program. You can see that we have 12 asset classes and we've been in operation for 11 years now. In addition to pavement and bridges, we focus on culverts, walls, tunnels, and road equipment like snowplows. We also have ITS devices, geohazards, maintenance, and traffic signals. And finally, we have Hope's 2 asset classes, which are buildings and rest areas. Our overall TAM budget is about $800 million a year, but even with all of those assets that we have, those 12 asset classes, more than 85% still goes to the 3 big asset classes of pavement, bridge, and maintenance. So that's how our funding is structured. For each asset class that we do have requirements they must follow, and those are now memorialized in a policy directive 1609. So each asset class must have an inventory. They have to have a performance measure and target. They have to have a model that can forecast the benefit of additional investment and that can recommend projects. And finally, they can't spend money on expansion, so they have to be maintaining the existing system. We are somewhat different than other DOTs that focus on these massive, even corridor-wide projects with many asset types. CDOT definitely does some of that, but what the TAM program specifically does is construct what we call treatments, and those treatments are very surgical activities like a culvert replacement or a preventive maintenance treatment. And those treatments are designed to most efficiently move the needle on our very top line metrics. So that's our program in a nutshell, and I'm going to turn it over to Hope right now to talk about buildings.
Hi there. Again, Hope Wright, Buildings and Rest Areas Asset Manager for CDOT. I'll get right in because we are a little bit over time. So we do have a little over 1,000 buildings in our inventory. However, for purposes of budget setting, we only include 520 of those structures in our analysis. And the most abundant building type that we include in our analysis are the maintenance/vehicle storage facilities. We do use a mobile app to calculate a letter grade for each of our buildings. So we have 2 interns who annually go out and assess each of our buildings using an in-house developed GIS tool. And that tool not only captures, photographs and other issues, we look at every bit of the building. So they look at everything from the structure to the components. And then we use the scores that they assign for each of those components to develop an overall weighted letter grade for each building. So our goal for our buildings is that we would like to see 85% of them or more at a letter grade C or above. And right now, only 48% of our buildings are at a letter grade C or above. So we use the letter grade that's calculated through the mobile app. We use that data to calculate our performance, which I'll talk about here in a little bit more. So on the next slide, we kind of, as I mentioned earlier, our most abundant building type is the maintenance and traffic buildings. They're also our most important building. They directly impact the public. They store essential equipment so that our essential workers can get out and clear the roads of snow, debris, or whatever it is that they need to do to get back on the road. So previously, probably about 5 years ago, we really just looked at building condition. We weren't looking at functionality of a building. So we might have a maintenance building that was getting a letter grade A or a B, but the reality was it wasn't serving its purpose. Its sole purpose was to hold maintenance equipment. And so our maintenance equipment, which is a very expensive asset, is one of our 12 assets, as Toby mentioned earlier. Those assets were sitting outside because they were too large to fit into our buildings. So we kind of pivoted and we started looking at our buildings differently from a different lens. We looked at them through functionality versus just condition. So condition is still a component that we look at with our maintenance buildings, but we weight their functionality a lot more. So that meant we had to pivot on a lot of things. We had to modify our field collection device to capture every bay size. So we gave our interns measuring devices and they were able to measure the depth and the width of every single bay. We asked them to count the number of bays, and then we used the number of pieces of equipment assigned to that building also as another component into how we were scoring the buildings. So what that did is it made our it made our overall performance drop. And I'll show you that here in a little bit. But as you can see, our whole focus now is that because our plow trucks are so big, we need to make sure that our vehicle storage facilities or our maintenance buildings are able to handle those. So that was one of the things that we did. And you can see here the reason that our maintenance buildings are so expensive. I don't really need to repeat those, but they are very important for all residents of the state of Colorado. So what another graph I like to show is that buildings are important, right? Buildings are important because as our buildings decrease in their functionality, there's an operational impact, right? So as you're going around along the x-axis, you can see that if we have a poor building, then that means that the plow truck is parked outside. That means that we shorten equipment life for our very expensive plows. And all of those have operational impacts as we go up the y-axis, right? So that means that employees might have to work on equipment that's parked outside versus in a covered facility. They could slip on the ice, they could fall and hurt themselves. They also have longer prep times. So they can't just jump in that plow truck, do their 9-point inspection or whatever it is and get out and go. They have to clear it of snow. They have to make sure they're clearing it of ice. And all of those lead in the end to decreased levels of service. So this has been a really hard push for a small asset, right? We're one of the smaller assets and we're always competing against bridge and asphalt. And to show that we're important and we're as important as those other assets has been a struggle. But this slide, I think, really represents the importance of our buildings and then the importance that we're really putting into building functionality. So next slide, again, you can see here 3 years ago is when we changed our performance metric from just looking at the building itself and giving it a letter grade to actually pivoting to functionality. And as a result, our overall condition fell. So we were in the 80% range of buildings above a letter grade or at a letter grade C or better, and we fell immediately to 55%, and now we're at 49 and 48, and we're trending downward. And those downward trends absolutely completely reflect the fact that we're getting less money. And while we're thrilled that we have a dedicated funding stream, you can see the effects of fewer dollars and their impact on our overall performance. And then here is a graph that we use for our budget setting purposes. And this just shows how much money we would need to get ourselves to our goal of 85% of our buildings at a letter grade C or above. And so right now we're getting about 15.5 a year, which has a slow upward trend, right? But if we were to get $65.5 million a year, we could hit our target in under 5 years. So this is a piece that we use when we try to get a bigger piece of the pie every year from the larger budgets. It hasn't worked yet, but we have our fingers crossed. Our project selection process is pretty straightforward. We take the data that was collected in the field, we give that to our consultant who runs some analysis, and he spits out a planning budget based on which treatments would have the biggest impact on our performance, right? Our overall performance of how many buildings at a letter grade C or better. We plug those into our annual property plan, and then we distribute those to the region. One piece I do want to mention about our annual budget. So of the $15.5 million that we get each year, we do give our regions 15 to 20% of that for preventative maintenance on our buildings. So they have building trades professionals who will use that to upgrade roofs, fix HVAC, fix plumbing, any of the items noted in the collection process that are kind of low-hanging fruit. And then, of course, to fix unexpected issues as well. And then of that, just the balance goes to capital projects. So that's where we're really trying to make our impact on our performance. Some of the challenges, we have a budget that keeps getting stretched thinner and thinner. We've had, for the biggest impact for us at this point has been employee housing. Colorado has some very expensive areas to live in, such as Aspen Vale, and those areas make it really hard to attract quality staff. And we are headed full wind into employee housing. We have 2 units under construction as we speak. And while we were trying not to use these funds for those employee housing units, it's become inevitable with cost increases. So some of our budget has had to go to that. As I mentioned in that earlier sentence, cost increases. COVID killed us, and I'm sure everyone in the room can say that. We had 53% increase from fiscal year 21 to 22, and then another 25 that's not on here from 22 to 23. So we are not seeing prices go down. We are seeing maybe them stabilize a bit, but I'm not sure they're ever going to go down. And then, of course, we've had some greening state governments that have some requirements for LED retrofits and high performance contracting that we're trying to work through. And then we just have a backlog of buildings. And so as our construction costs have increased, our dollar is going, it's not going as far. So we've had to push projects out. And as a matter of fact, we've pushed projects from fiscal years 25 and 26 all the way out to 29 and 30. So we essentially can't take on a new project until fiscal year 31. So projects that we thought we could get completed in a 5-year period because of cost increases, we're now completing those same number of projects in a 10-year period. So it's had a huge impact on what we can complete in a year. So those are just some of the challenges. And that's all I have. I guess I can turn it over here. I'll stop presenting.
All right. Well, thank you, Hope. Well, and Toby for that presentation, but to all of you, what a terrific set of presentations, so rich in detail and approaches. And I love that there was a variety of the way you approach these other assets. So so if people have a question, please type it in. But now that we're in the open part, people can just open their mics too and ask the question. The only question I see in the Q&A is from Asa Kirkus from Alabama, who's asking if Connecticut can share their scoring guidelines for signal components. I don't know if Miguel can answer that question. Stephanie is not with us, who did the pre-recorded her presentation.
So, I mean, I guess in terms of that question, I mean, we had several states talk about different assets that they were collecting. And I know for some of them, it may be internal deliberation. For legal reasons, they may not want to share their scoring criteria. But, from the different states that presented on their additional assets that they were scoring and tracking from a transportation asset management standpoint, I was wondering if they could share some of those guides.
Okay, well, I mean, what I suggest is that once the slides are available, which they may be already, you can reach out to the people who presented directly and see if they will share them with you. I don't know if any of the other speakers want to respond. I think Mike had to leave to go back to his holiday open house at Caltrans.
So hi, this is Kellie, Thom, from MnDOT. I am putting in the chat our web link just for the hydraulics inspector website that we do have, and on there we do have our inventory inspection manual. I know it's not signals, but inspection manual. It is slightly outdated. I am doing an update this winter that can give you an overall idea of how we inspect our drainage infrastructure.
Thank you, Kellie.
Could there maybe be a resource on the TAM portal where people could put their essentially their scoring criteria? for their additional assets? Just a thought.
So this is Miguel Simon of Connecticut DOT. I advise you to reach out to Stephanie Shippee. I actually put her email in the chat. She would be happy to discuss any questions that she's in here at the moment to answer them. You guys can kind of go in depth into what those guidelines are for the scoring.
Hey, so we're happy to post things if people are willing to share it, but they would have to authorize us posting it.
Yeah, I understand, and I understand, there's probably some people that for legal reasons, certain agencies might not want to share that information.
Yeah.
So
So
I'm sorry, this is Diane. We did have another question that came in. That
yep, I'm
didn't show
going
up
to
on
that. Yep, I see it.
Oh, the one from Richard Dunn, because that one didn't show up in the chat, but it did come in. And it was this was for Stephanie, and it was how often do you inspect your 11 asset classes? And is it done in-house or with consultants? Miguel, can you answer that one?
Yeah, once again, I've been advised to have you guys reach out to Stephanie, and she'll be able to answer any questions you may come up with after the presentation.
All right, so reach out to Stephanie, and then there was a question on, do any of the presenters have inspection procedures for ferry terminal assets? And I'm guessing that most of them don't, but then William put up something from Washington State DOT where they do have the ferry mode as they're within the DOT. William, do you want to say anything more about that?
I have no idea why I remember that.
So this is G. I asked the question originally, and it's all good. It's kind of very small mold in our world. So thank you. I appreciate it.
Okay. All right. There's a comment from John Kitchens. I don't know if you want to share it yourself, but you're welcome to open your mic and share it. But I'm happy.
Yeah, thank you, hon. Yeah, I just always curious about when they're talking about using mobile apps, staff, mechanics, whatever, on right-of-ways or highways, and just how these different DOTs are navigating the safety issues related to that, whether it's, just basically keeping their folks trained or what kind of policies they have. Any kind of examples would be wonderful.
Ning, do you have experience with this?
Yes, I'd be happy to take that questions. We actually started to use a mobile application, starting with ADA curb ramps, probably back in 2015. So now using mobile applications to connect asset data, doing inspections, almost become a standard practice in VDOT. As to the safety issue, actually, we recently launched a new guardrail terminal inspection programs. As you know, it's inspecting terminals on the roadside. It's probably there's a lot of safety issues. We did develop a safety guidance on how to train the inspectors to generally conduct the inspection, including using the mobile application. So from our probably near 10 years of practice, we didn't see too much safety issue. I know our construction divisions are using mobile application to do construction acceptance. We use a mobile application for our traffic signal inspections, guardrails, curb ramps. So it's become widely used in VDOT now.
Thanks, Ning. So Michael from MnDOT, do you want to ask your question?
Hello, hey, Anna. Yes, I can. This is Michael. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
It was kind of a bit wordy. I'll almost have to read it off the chat there.
Mhm.
Are there opportunities to reward asset owners or managers/stewards achieving efficiency gains in asset management practices, such as improved integration of multiple asset classes? I guess I was trying to ask about today's topic and on into the future. Do
So
we see, yeah,
Well, I was just curious, so you're asking, are people rewarding asset owners to work together across asset types?
yeah, it could be one interpretation. I mean, that or other ways of looking at that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Does anybody have any response to that question?
This is Toby from Colorado DOT. I'm not sure about rewards, but we do in our budget setting workshop, we have each asset explain what their budget pays for in the hopes that they can get more funding. And the pavement asset certainly pays for, I think, guardrail and a lot of other asset work. So just by explaining that, they can have the potential to receive more funding. We also frequently have later deadlines for our bridge program because they definitely like to look at the pavement list to bundle all their treatments together. That's one of their prime strategies in terms of project selection. So we do try to recognize assets that are working together and encourage that.
Right. One of the questions I had after hearing the presentation from Hope from Colorado, but across the board for all of you is, do any of you have the opportunity to get more money from other assets? Meaning, do you do any cross-asset optimization that allows for greater funds? I was thinking with Hope, as you've seen decline in your building conditions, can you get additional money from an asset that's actually doing better or has more money?
I want to be sensitive about how I say it. We have definitely had that discussion, especially for rest areas. I thought that it might make sense that surface treatment could help us out if they're planning to replace the interstate in front of one of our rest areas. Maybe they could also include some deteriorating asphalt within our rest areas. Buildings, it's a little bit more tricky because they're not always on right of way. But if they are adjacent to a highway or if they're close to right of way, we've had that discussion. It hasn't happened yet. But yes, we've thought of that, but we haven't actually been able to complete anything with any of the additional funds.
Mm-hmm. Ning, do you do any cross-asset optimization across the traffic and safety assets?
Not officially. Yeah, we do integrate different assets together I would say yes. For example, for our guardrail investment, this thing, we are leveraging the pavement conditions and the guardrail conditions sometimes because oftentimes before we just improved the guardrail in our paving corridor. But however, when you have a paving operation, sometimes you change the elevations. So if you have a newly installed guardrail, they put new guardrail on the paving corridor, that potential to change elevations. Basically, you waste your money making a newly installed guardrail kind of little substandards. So we do integrate the paving condition information into our guardrail investment design. So it's wall GIS layers we can integrate together. So I don't know if that counts to a cross-functional asset integration.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Kellie, do you have any view of how your asset fits within the broader TAM program you have at Minda?
Yes. So, you know, I think just by having performance measures, specifically for highway culverts, which are the culverts that run underneath the mainline roads, that has brought greater awareness of the overall condition of our system, and it tie that along to other assets too. So, you know, somebody, a planner, can take a look at, okay, we have some culverts in poor, very poor conditions, along with some pavement issues, along with some other issues within this area, and that can help maybe provide extra funding for a project if needed. That is one way that I see that how our asset ties with other assets. It's just to bring more awareness that it's not just something you can see easily, but there could be something underneath the roadway that we have to fund. Also, the resiliency too, that has been brought up a few times too, and so how that affects other assets as well.
I'm curious, for all of the assets that were mentioned today, you know, do you kind of grapple with the issue of the cost of the data collection, you know, just the inventory and condition assessment with the actual cost of the program itself? Especially when you have smaller asset programs, is that an issue, or are you kind of appropriately spending a small percentage of the program size to be able to make better decisions using asset management? Who wants to take that?
Anna, maybe I can answer that. Yes, the cost is a huge consideration in our, especially for traffic asset management. As you see, we tend to have no unit value traffic assets. The inventory data connections sometimes probably cost a lot of money. Sometimes the juice doesn't worth the squeeze. That's why we started to use the virtual data connections, like using like similar to Google Street View. We have more updated versions, so we can see clearly, like the curb runs, like the guardrail on the roadside. From that we can tell exactly what type of terminal model it is, what type of general condition, whether the curb runs in compliance or not. So that's a way we used to minimize the cost and quickly establish an inventory. It's not perfect, but it's better than nothing.
Yeah. Hope?
Sorry, I will say that there are two different pots of money for us. So the money that we spend on data collection comes out of a personal services line. And so for us, it's just a no-brainer. It doesn't impact our overall budget at all as far as capital construction. So I don't know if that answered your question.
And do you find that irregardless of where the money comes from, that it's not costing too much to do the data collection versus what you have to spend?
Correct. No.
Yeah.
Definitely well worth it.
Yeah. Good. And how about a final question? So, you know, listening to you all, it made me think about the fact that many of you, have many different assets, and you must have a quest to have some standardized approach to your assets so that you're collecting information and there is a way to you know, kind of look at the assets across similar dimensions, versus the fact that each of your assets have very unique needs. And so just asking, do you kind of have an approach or thoughts about that balance of having a standardization across assets versus the unique needs of each asset? Toby, do you have any thoughts on that?
Just that it's a really difficult challenge for us because a lot of the programs had legacy budgets that we incorporated into our program, so they were spending money on a lot of different things. So it's really just a slow process for us to say, like with ITS, for example, they were spending a lot on operations. So we forced them to spend a certain amount on like replacement, proactive replacement. The models are also set up somewhat differently. So we're trying to get a handle on that. We do use similar inflation rates and discount rates and things like that. But in terms of, we'll find out at one point that an asset might be including design cost in their model and another might not be including design costs. So it's really a big struggle to set up models for all these different assets that are using similar assumptions.
Thanks, Toby. Anybody else want to share their view on this? All right. Well, I think we're at the end of our webinar, and we could go to the last slide. So our next webinar is going to be on Wednesday, February 21st at the exact same time. And we don't have the topic yet because we're waiting to have the TAM survey, which is in its last days of submission. So if you have not filled out the survey or don't even know about it, but would like to, you can email me or Anna and we'll send you the link. And so we'll use the input from the survey to establish the webinar program for 2024. But we look forward to seeing you all, and thank you to all of our speakers today. It was really a terrific set of presentations. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.